Today we're diving into the pretty wild story of Mega Upload. This was a website that, for a lot of people, wasn't just on the internet, it felt like it kind of was the internet. It was a massive digital empire, and its collapse was just as spectacular as its rise.
So let's just start with this number, because it's absolutely staggering. At its peak, Mega Upload was responsible for nearly 4% of all traffic on the entire internet. Just stop and think about that. Everything happening online, every search, every video, every single thing, and this one website accounted for a 4% chunk of it. That's insane.
And all that traffic made it the 13th most visited website on the entire planet. We're talking over 50 million people a day. It was right up there with the huge names we all still use, a real titan of the web.
Which brings us to the big question, right? How does an empire that huge, that powerful, just vanish? Practically overnight? Well, to get that answer, we've got to go back and look at the laws that basically governed the early internet.
See, to really get Mega Upload, you have to understand the legal world it was born into. It didn't just pop up out of nowhere. No, it was built very carefully inside a very specific and, as it turns out, a very exploitable legal loophole.
And that loophole was part of this, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. You've probably heard it called the DMCA. It was signed into law back in 1998 by President Clinton, and it basically became the rulebook for how copyright was supposed to work online, a brand new set of rules for a brand new digital world.
And here is the absolute key to this whole story, the DMCA's safe harbor provision. The idea was pretty simple. If a company was hosting a file that broke copyright, the copyright owner would send them a takedown notice. The host just had to remove the file and boom, they were in the clear, no liability. The blame was all on the person who uploaded it, not the platform. And this created a massive legal gray area, one that somebody was about to drive a whole fleet of supercars right through.
And that brings us to the man himself, the guy who didn't just get this new digital world, but was absolutely determined to own it.
He was born Kim Schmidz in Germany, and he was, let's say, a pretty colorful character from the get-go. His first conviction was for hacking, and get this, it was in 1998, the exact same year the DMCA became law. Coincidence? Anyway, after another arrest for insider trading, he decided it was time for a total rebrand. In 2005, his company became Mega Upload, and Kim Schmidz, well, he legally changed his name to Kim.com.
He moved all the way to New Zealand and started living this unbelievably over-the-top life. We're talking mansions, helicopters, fleets of luxury cars with vanity plates like guilty. He wasn't just building a company. He was building a persona, a myth, and it was all funded by this incredibly successful new website.
And man, did that website grow. It grew faster and bigger than anyone could have imagined. It wasn't just another site. For a whole generation of internet users, it was basically an essential tool. Just how successful are we talking? Well, in 2010 alone, Mega Upload brought in over $40 million in revenue. This was not some small-time operation. It was a global financial powerhouse.
So why was it so popular? Because it had everything. See, older services like LimeWire were getting sued into oblivion. Megaload became the new one-stop shop. Yeah, it had pirated movies and music and games, but, and this is super important, it also hosted tons of totally legal personal and business files. Millions of people used it just for cloud storage, seeing it as the best service out there, not some pirate hideout.
This is where the story just gets audacious. By 2011, Mega Upload was so bold, so confident, that they released the Mega Song. This was a full-blown music video with A-list celebrities like will.i.am and Alicia Keys, all singing about how great Mega Upload was. It was basically a giant, flashy middle finger to the very industries and authorities that were trying to shut them down.
But you can't be that defiant forever. The empire was at its absolute height, which of course meant the fall was about to be just as sudden and just as dramatic.
And the timing of it all is just wild. On January 18th, 2012, the internet staged this huge protest against two anti-piracy bills, SOP and PIPA. Big sites like Wikipedia went dark, and it worked. The bills were shelved. And then, in what has to be one of the craziest coincidences ever, the very next day, the US government launched the single biggest anti-piracy takedown in history.
And the government came in heavy. The Department of Justice alleged that Mega Upload had cost copyright holders more than $500 million, and they claimed the company itself had made over $175 million from piracy. These were not small numbers.
The arrest itself was straight out of an action movie. We're talking helicopters descending on his mansion in New Zealand, heavily armed special police units swarming the property. They seized his cars, and most importantly, they seized 150 terabytes of data. And just like that, the entire empire went dark.
But the raid? That wasn't the end of the story. Not even close. It was actually just the start of this super messy, decade-long legal fight that brought up all these huge questions about who owns data, what is internet freedom, and how far can one country's laws really reach in this borderless digital world.
And while all the lawyers were arguing, millions of regular users had a much more immediate question. The site was gone, but hey, what happened to all my stuff? What happened to my files? The answer was a total digital catastrophe. It was a really harsh lesson for a lot of people. One server company in Europe just wiped everything. 630 servers worth of data, poof, gone. In the US, 25 petabytes, that's 25 million gigabytes, were just frozen. For so many people, family photos, work projects, personal documents, they weren't just stuck, they were gone for good.
And the legal case just dragged on and on. .com even launched a successor site called Mega. A judge said he could be extradited to the US way back in 2015, but then came the appeals, and more appeals. More than a decade later, the whole thing is still not resolved. He's still in New Zealand, stuck in this legal limbo, and his case has become this huge landmark for how we prosecute internet crime across borders.
Which leaves us with this really complicated question about Kim.com himself. So, who was he? Was he a digital pirate, a criminal mastermind who built a fortune on theft? Or was he an internet folk hero, an innovator who just built a better service that old-school industries couldn't keep up with? It's a tough one. And the debate he started about innovation, privacy, and control online, yeah, we are definitely still having that conversation today.